Welcome everybody to Jump Music Initiative's podcast. Here we have Lisa Jacobs with us today, and we are just super happy to have her here. We have so many things that we want to ask her. I think that we might have to have her back, and we haven't even started yet. But if you're not familiar with Lisa Jacobs already, she is a powerhouse in the Calgary music scene. Sideman extraordinaire, music therapist, artist, producer, writer, everything. She just kind of does it all, and she's kind of most noted for working with Jocelyn Alice and tons of other Canadian artists and artists from around the world as well, and just got off the road a few months ago with the Queen show. What was that show called, Lisa?
We Will Rock You.
We Will Rock You, yes, of course.
Yes.
Yes. And how was that? Well, let's start there. Welcome back. Did you have a good tour?
Welcome. Yeah, it was an incredible tour, an amazing opportunity. It was 6 months across North America in a musical, which was very different for me. But all of the music was Queen's music, and John Deacon wrote some incredible bass lines, so that part was really fun. It was my first time working with actors in that kind of capacity, so that was different. But yeah, overall, it was a really incredible, amazing experience, and I was very grateful to be a part of it.
Very cool. I have a feeling that we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about that, but I think I might turn things over to Maddie so she can get things rolling with a few questions.
Perfect. Welcome, Lisa. I wanted to ask, what would be your advice to musicians just starting out in the industry, given today's landscape and all the experience you have?
And on that note, let's say from a sideman, can we say from like a side person perspective, Lisa?
Yeah, totally. So this would be a kind of an easy answer had it been a couple months ago before the entire music industry shifted and changed. And I would have said, I think the number one thing that musicians need to do is play music together and create opportunities so they can play together. And because it's really easy, and people spend a lot of time playing alone in their houses, but music is a very collaborative thing, and the most of the stuff that you're going to learn is coming from playing with other human beings and not just by yourself and to a record, although you learn a lot of things that way. I think in this time now, though, stuff is changing. There aren't as many opportunities to play in clubs or little shows or put those all together. You have to really seek different ways to create opportunities, and I think that this is a really incredible season for innovation. And so for emerging artists right now, I would say one of the number one things that you can do is actually, it's going to be different, but it's learning how to record yourself. So because we're all already learning how to play. People know how to practice and take lessons and all of that, but we have this awesome opportunity where we can't maybe get together in the same way. And so there's all kinds of programs available at all different kinds of price ranges and free, where you can learn how to track your own self-playing, which is going to lead to a bunch of different things. The first thing, recording yourself, and it's pretty easy. Like, you can just get GarageBand, and I have, like, when I go on the rig, I don't even take a full system. Sometimes I just take a little iRig thing and plug it in and use GarageBand when I'm traveling, because it's really easy. And so you don't have to be afraid of it as someone who's starting recording. You can just pick up something really simple, inexpensive, and get going. And so I would say once you start recording yourself, you get to kind of hear what you sound like and play to a metronome. And then you can start to produce your own music and try different things. But then I also think we're going to be collaborating in that kind of way. So when everything got locked down, I was sending bass tracks out, and I would just record the bass track and send it out, which I was doing before, but I think right now that's been happening a lot more. So,
yeah, the collaboration being online for
absolutely. Absolutely. And learning how to record on a program, it's never going to go away. Like that's sticking around forever. So it's good to learn that. Yeah, and also find opportunities, like create opportunities, get people over at your house and play. And then the other thing I would say, for sidemen, for people that are singer-songwriters as well, to practice playing either to a drum beat or like to metronome, but honestly, playing to metronome is really boring, and it's important that you learn it so when you record, you can play to a click, but it's not that fun, and it doesn't sound that good, and it's not inspiring, but putting on a drum track, is really inspiring, and it holds you accountable to time. And you start to notice, like, if you're having to think before you change a chord and you like miss something, you start to notice that there's somebody there keeping it going, like it would if you were playing with other people, right? And so I think it really helps to develop your intrinsic sense of time, and yeah, and hold you accountable and get you like acknowledging what you're doing really, really good and where you're kind of faltering, like which chord shapes you're having trouble getting to. Yeah. And it's really important because the real foundation of music is the groove and like that sound together. And it's not just the responsibility of a drummer and a bass player. And a lot of times when we talk about groove, we're talking about the drummer, we're talking about the bass player, but everybody in the band is responsible for that. So people that are playing the keyboards, and if you're singing and playing, like you got to be able to get that keyboard happening in a rhythmic way with everybody else.
I should have mentioned right off the top that you're primarily a bass player, and you're known for being a bass player, of course. But I know that you play all sorts of other instruments as well. Do you think that it's important for bass players or any musician to broaden their musical scope with other instruments?
Well, as a multi-instrumentalist, yeah, I would say yes. I think there's just music is so incredible, and when you start to play a bunch of different things, you have just a different understanding of all of the aspects of music and the different kinds of functions the music plays, and you have different ways of expressing yourself and connecting to the music through different instruments. And I think also you have a different respect and understanding of the people that you get to play with when you also have attempted to play their instrument. You know, like when I see drummers do what they do, it's like extra mind-blowing to me because I've sat down in a drum kit and attempted to play the drums, and like that's hard, man. They're using all their limbs at the same time, all doing different stuff. Like that's wild. But you know, if I'd never attempted to do that myself, there's like some mystery and some amazement over there, but like it really sinks in when you give it a try. Yeah. I will say though, there are people that can play a lot of instruments sort of mediocrely, but if you really want to be a session musician, you have to get really good on one instrument. And so to spend your time sort of like focusing on that one thing and then allow the other things to supplement that, and maybe fuel your creativity when you're tired of practicing your main instrument. So to definitely choose a main instrument and do that, and find one that you like love and like really love and love playing with other people.
Yeah, that's a good point you made about connecting with other people and that being the best way to kind of improve. And I was going to say, how do you recommend young musicians get in contact with other people in the industry? How do they grow their contacts? How do they meet people, especially now during these times?
Oh, that is a very good question.
It's forcing us to think about it, isn't it? You know, because everything has changed.
It really has, absolutely. Well, you know, when I was a kid, we didn't have the internet. So like you didn't really meet strangers unless you went out. And so there's this whole other way to connect to all kinds of musicians right at your fingertips. And you can follow people and message them and message your peers. And also I think finding people and playing with people that are better than you and more advanced and experienced than you is very, very, very important. And to kind of put yourself in situations where you're an underdog. This is like a side note, but actually I'll just finish it because I'm like very passionate about this particular thing. But I think that for myself, and I really firmly believe for all musicians of all ages, that it's really important to be in two different kinds of scenarios. And one of the first scenario would be to be the underdog in a situation. So to be in a place where people are better than you, maybe they're more experienced, and you kind of like are always not the weak link, but a little bit of a weak link in there. And so there's lots of opportunities for you to learn and grow and like watch and take it all in. And you feel a little bit insecure in those situations. And so there's that one side. And then the other side is you want to find opportunities where you're top dog, where you're the best player, where you get to be the leader, where people listen to you, where you get to take all of your own experience and like put that into a scenario, because that'll grow your confidence. Because if you're always feeling a little bit insecure in a situation, you're going to be an insecure kind of feeling a person and player. So you want to kind of like have both of those things. And if you never put yourself in a situation where people are better than you, then you're just not going to grow, right? Mm-hmm. So, and even like, you know, I've been a professional musician for, oh my God, like a lot of years. And I still find myself in both of those situations. I'm still constantly entering these situations where I'm just like, am I good enough to be here? What am I doing here? And yeah, and it's good. And then there's situations where I'm like, I'm comfortable and I know how to run this particular situation.
While you were talking, I had a bit of a thought actually, Lisa. I think people these days, to grow their contacts to industry contacts, but also contacts like within their own instrument, you can reach out these days and take a lesson from whoever almost.
Totally.
You know, and there you go, the contact is made. And you can ask that person questions and they might recommend you for something if you make an impression or you have some, you know, an ongoing relationship with them. It just kind of occurred to me while you were talking that, you know, you can almost take lessons from, not anybody, but, you know, almost anybody these days. And, you know, just reaching out and messaging them and seeing what happens is, you know, sometimes what you have to do. I've had success doing that, reaching out to people I didn't know. And maybe that's a good answer as well. Like, you know, for these days when you can't really leave your house.
Absolutely. I was just literally talking to someone today who reached out to like a masterful slide guitar player in New York who's right now not gigging because he's at home like the rest of us. And so they're just like available and pumped to do literally anything to make money, you know? And now we have like all this cool technology to be able to do that. So I personally haven't done that, but one of the things that I have done since I haven't been able to play with my colleagues as much is I've been diving into like some bass lessons online, and there's like all kinds of websites and tutorials and videos, and so I've been doing that a little bit, which has been really cool.
Cool, good for you. And have they just been like video lessons that you've been checking out or what? Yeah,
I'm on this website. There's like thousands of videos on it, and they have it's called Scott's Bass Lessons, I think.
Oh, yeah.
This guy out of UK. Have you seen this?
I've seen ads.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I saw an ad and then I decided to join and I've started doing some courses. And like today I watched like a live seminar with this bass player guy. And what's been really cool about it is I've been kind of like checking out some of the intermediate stuff and some of the advanced stuff. And you know, I watched a thing on walking bass lines. I mean, I've been walking bass lines since I was like 12 years old, you know, like I know how to do that, but I watched this guy talk about it and I learned some new things that I didn't even think about because, you know, amazing teachers are able to break down what you're doing and give voice to it. And sometimes I'm just doing things because I just know how to do them. And it was really neat to hear some different perspectives of that. And I was able to I've been adding in new things to stuff that I already know how to do, which has been neat.
Good for you. That's really admirable. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask, from a young musician's perspective, you've had a lot of experience being a side musician for hire. And one thing that I'm thinking just from, like I said, a young musician's perspective that might deter them is the thought that they might not have as much creative control in those situations where they're not calling the shots. So what would you say to that? What's your perspective on it and how do you make it a fulfilling creative experience?
Maybe before you answer, Lisa, can you also maybe just give us a little bit of a background on what a side person does, a side musician, side man, side woman, what their role is in on a gig or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so a side person comes along and supports an artist or supports a band. So they're put into a different situation and they could be playing as a side person in that gig with one band for a while, but they're not in charge of the sound. They don't design any of the merch. Sometimes they're writing songs, but usually they're not part of writing the song. And so they're really being hired to come in and do a specific role, and they get paid for that role and then they leave. So when you're in a band, you get to have way more input and it's way more collaborative in that way. But also you don't always get paid for your shows and you make investment into the band. So if a band were to hire me to come in and play bass for them, I would just be serving whatever they kind of need for that. And so what I have found, and you're right, like Maddie, you don't have nearly as much creative control. George, did I answer your question enough?
Yep, yep.
About what a side person is? Yeah. So Maddie, you're right. You don't have as much creative control, and it's a different kind of musical fulfillment. So I would say being a side musician is not for everybody. Being a session musician is not for everyone. In that you have to kind of like listen to other human beings and make their project come to life for their own personal vision, and find joy and satisfaction, maybe not always in playing music in genres that you like or even songs that you really like, but to find joy in just playing music. If you want to have any kind of like longevity being a side person, you just have to find joy in the act of playing and being a part of music, regardless of kind of what it is. Because I mean, there's been situations where I have like absolutely delighted in the music that I have the opportunity to play, and there's been other times where it's really tougher and I have to dig deep, you know. And I will even say, like the We Will Rock You Queen tour, I had to play the exact same thing every single night for 112 shows, and then prior to that for rehearsals, and then prior to that learning all of the music and memorizing it, right? So, and like that specific gig, it's not about your own creative integrity and being able to like make the songs like the LJ version of the song. Like I can't deny that Who I Am is going to be a part of that because I'm not John Deacon, and so it's there, you know, and that was important to the music director put it together, that we would still have a voice in the music, but I'm playing those lines that they wrote out for that show. And so you know, I was kind of worried about the whole discipline, because it's a discipline to be able to play the exact same thing every night. Right? And that was a really special challenge for me, and I really looked at it like that, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be good at it, because I think that one of the things I love to bring to the table is feeling what's happening in the moment and responding to the other musicians in that moment, you know, and having that kind of like live music experience. I love that. That wasn't what that gig was. And so, you know, there were times when that was tough to play that exact same thing I've been playing for a lot of nights. And what I really had to do is dig into the reason why I love playing music, and really actually look at why the way that the music feeds my own soul, and just like my bass and how I connect with it and the sound of it, and also just like what I want to put out into the world, and tap into that kind of part of it. So it's way deeper than just actually playing notes. And for me, music has always been like that, deeper than just playing some notes and executing it. And I think that when I show up for people's gigs, I really want to try hard to like bring that kind of like love of actual music to the experience of that, and have that be what I contribute to the show. You know, in addition to playing the right notes and being in the pocket and listening, I want to make sure that I'm bringing just like that joy of music. Yeah,
that's a great answer. Can you quickly walk us through your process of, say, when you get an offer for a gig, kind of to the show? Because I've seen you do this in various stages, but I'm sure you must have a process of you know, how you make the contact, and just can you walk us through it from getting that first message to the gig?
Yeah. So when I get a call for the gig, you know, it's a matter of like, do I want to play this or not? And is it all going to work out? And so setting that kind of stuff up. And then artists send music in multiple different kinds of ways, and they have multiple kinds of timelines of when they're going to send it. And so part of the side musician vibe is just going with the flow and understanding that everybody does everything a little bit differently. And so sometimes people will just send a list of songs. And I mean, when I first started, there was no YouTube. I would go to the library and like get cassette tapes out. Oh, that makes me sound so old. You know, to learn the songs. It was crazy. And now you can find kind of anything. And so, or people will send me MP3s or tracks or like a SoundCloud link. And then sometimes people will send music, and I get charts in all different kinds of forms. So I can read actual notation, And then right now, especially in the country music industry, Nashville, the Nashville number system is a really common way to chart stuff. So that's just using like 1, 4, 5, and they have their own way. And so I actually used to convert all of those Nashville number charts to chord charts, so that I wouldn't screw up on the gig. But
Yeah,
I've been like,
I'm no good at that Nashville number stuff. It's
yeah, totally. And also because I'm always playing in situations where like I haven't played the show before and I have to play it like basically perfect right when I show up. So like I can't afford that one extra second where I'm like, what is the flat 7 chord? Even though, you know, I know what that is, but it takes my mind. But I've been practicing getting better at that because I'm getting lots of those charts and it's a pain to have to convert them. So I've been practicing that at home. Also another thing I've been doing during lockdown. And then also people send chord charts, and then sometimes people just send the music and you got to learn those songs. And so I don't trust the internet because the people that make the chord charts on the internet aren't always right. Oh, there's actually most of the time wrong. I'm not sure I've ever found a chord chart that was right the entire way through.
Yeah.
So, and I think that developing and using your ears is one of the most important things to do as a musician. And that when you're given access to lots of different ways to figure out music, you don't have to use your ears. And I think it's a massive, it's a detriment to being a really good musician. So I actually just like chart out the songs by ear. I listen to them. I write all the chords out. And I used to use a pen and paper, and sometimes I still do, but I have an iPad. And so I throw it all in there and I learn those songs. If that particular job is me learning the actual bass lines, I learn all those bass lines. I memorize the ones that are really hard, or if it's a really special show and it's just a couple of songs, I'll memorize the whole show. I have a lot of music in my head, so I don't memorize everything. But if I'm going to go on the road with someone, I'll memorize their show. Otherwise, I have chord charts. And I have like, I think when you are a live player, it's really important that you're not a recording. And so there's this visual element of playing. And so it's got to look like I think that you should look like you're having maybe not fun, but also fun, and like moving to the music or like being a part of that. And sometimes when you have charts, and we've seen this, people get really stuck and locked in at reading the charts. And quite frankly, if I'm going to come to a show, like that is not an interesting way for me as an audience member to watch the show. I could have just listened to the recording. Like I want there to be a visual element. So for me, I've worked very hard at being able to have like sometimes cheat sheets or have like my charts, but to not look like I'm reading them all the time, which is something that I've practiced because I really value that when I come to a show, and even if I haven't memorized your whole show, it feels like I know your show and it looks like I know your show. Even if I can't remember your bridge and I had to write it down, which happens all the time. And then basically I'll show up either at a rehearsal after I've learned all your tunes, and sometimes there are no rehearsals. Sometimes we literally just get on stage, and that is super nerve-wracking. And so
I know sometimes you fly different places and just go right to the gig and then just play, and then sometimes you go like, you know, those situations, like I guess you just have to really know your stuff.
Yeah, and like literally meeting the artist on the stage, sometimes literally I go on the road with complete strangers, like there's a lot of different kinds of scenarios. And so musically, I'm just kind of like walking in and I want to make sure I know my stuff. And I think what I've noticed over the years, and what really happens when you're a session musician, because there's so much uncertainty. I mean, if you don't even know the people you're playing with, there's like a lot of sort of like anxiety and like excitement. Those things kind of feel the same. And so what I've noticed over the years is where in the music I falter when I get nervous, because everybody gets a little bit nervous. And so even if I think I know the song super well, there's places I know where I will be messing up. And so I make sure to make special notes of that. So in my charts, I'll highlight those sections. You know, if I go into a rehearsal and I screw up something, I make note of that so that I don't do it again, to give the artist security. And you got to have all your gear working and show up to your sound check and set up. I want to say on on time. I'm like a pretty late person, but I'm like 5 minutes late usually. But I'll get there early. Like everyone tells you, get there early and do it. And I work hard to get there early, but I suck. So to be honest.
That's good advice. The lateness thing and the gear, like that,
yeah,
having your gear working, good advice.
Gear working. And the other thing is, I'm like a super psycho usually about double checking that I have all my gear and like do the list in the car, do the list before I leave home. I mean, Jory knows. One time Jory went on and I went on tour and like I forgot my bass amp and we were in BC before we realized it. And like, I'm usually a total, like, I'm hardcore about it and just lost my mind. So I've never done that again, Jory.
It happens. I have, so.
Yeah, you know, and really like you want to give stability and create feelings of security for the artist that you're playing for. And so if your gear's not working when you show up, that creates instability. And I know that when I'm late for the sound check, it makes other people feel apprehensive, right? And so, and I know that when I'm running stuff and people are late, it makes me feel a little bit nervous, but I'm very gracious about it because, you know, it would be really hypocritical for me to be annoyed that someone was late. And then when you're on the show, man, being a session musician, like you got to show up with a good attitude and a good vibe because there is no job security. You are hired, you know, and people who are hiring you, they're looking for you to be skilled, but they're also looking for you to be able to be good at listening, to not be rude, to be a good hang, to look professional, whatever that means for the show and whatever that means for you personally, on the gig, and, you know your stuff and to have your stuff together, you know, and so those are some of the other kinds of qualities. And like, no one's going to want to really hire you back if you're a jerk. If it's your own band, and your own project, or you're in charge, you know, people get away with a lot more. But when you're kind of like sliding in there, you got to fit in, and be adjustable and be flexible because you're working with a lot of different kinds of personalities and a lot of different kinds of ways of moving through music and understand music and playing music, you know. And the more that you do it, the more that you start to see there's so many different ways to play. So people are calling out chords using their hands. Sometimes musicians aren't following their songs at all, and they're doing whatever they want. They forgot the form. And so you got to use your ears and be able to follow along to that. You know, that's why that ear training is super cool. That's important. And that's why listening is super important. You got to train that because you'll be backing up artists, and this happens all the time. And they just like, you know, especially singer-songwriters, they're not used to playing with other people. There's nobody holding them accountable to knowing where their song is going. And when you're on stage, it doesn't matter if your chord chart's right or wrong, or if you learned it exactly and you are right. When you are in the role of serving the music and serving the artist, you got to figure out what's going on in that moment and rise to the occasion.
That's really good advice. Yeah, it's a lot.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just like, ah.
That's good. We could have probably done a whole talk just on you know, your advice for that. There was a lot of stuff I hadn't even thought about, Lisa. That's a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say, being a musician, being a woman in the industry, do you feel that there's been growth? Do you think things are improving for female musicians in the industry in terms of opportunities?
Yes, I do.
And what is some advice that you could just offer some young musicians and female musicians in particular?
Okay. The first thing that I would say to female musicians is that there is nothing intrinsically different about your ability to play music. Nothing. And we, men and women, can learn how to play instruments and can be great at playing instruments. There's nothing about your gender that actually really changes that, you know. And there's other things like, you know, I've got super small hands and I'm a girl. Jory's a guy and he's got super large hands. So when he goes to play, oh my God, Jory, when he goes to play bass,
not fair.
It's like he can do a million things way easier than me. But here's the thing, is I know some incredible guitar players who have hands that are my size. And I know women who have large hands and can play all sorts, they can do that like 10th stretch on the piano, and it makes me so jealous, right? And so none of those kinds of things are make or break or about your gender, really. It's about how you're choosing to use who you are in that kind of mix. So yeah, I would definitely say, like, don't buy into that stuff, because when you're a woman in the industry, you are going to feel that. Even if it's quiet, it'll be quiet, and sometimes it's really loud and overt, that kind of idea that women aren't as good of musicians as men. And what I will say is that so that's first. We aren't really different in our ability to play. The second thing would be that I think it's really, really important for women to show up as professionals and as equals. And that if you want to be treated as an equal, you got to show up as an equal. And that a lot of women get away with stuff that they think and the world thinks men are better at. So understanding gear, knowing how to troubleshoot, knowing how to wrap cables and set up a PA and haul your own stuff. Those are things that are often viewed as things that guys just know how to do well and do better and just do. And we live in this kind of world where people will cater to women in that way, and they'll help them do all of those things. But I am very passionate about this particular topic, and I think that if you want to be treated as an equal, you got to show up as an equal, and that means knowing how to do all of the stuff with your gear. And that doesn't mean that you have to know everything, but it does mean that you have to be willing to learn and like ask questions about how to do stuff, and then learn it and then reproduce it. Because the guys in your band, they didn't come out of the womb knowing how to set up a PA or wrap a cable, and neither did you. Everyone learned that, right? And some people are more technically inclined, and that's awesome, but that's not a gender specific thing. So and I would say to men who are learning how to play music and who are in bands and being a professional musician, that it seems like it would be a really nice thing to carry your female musicians' gear for them. But what you want to do is you actually want them to know how to do their own stuff. You want them, so you want to empower them. So if they're struggling with something, show them how to do it, and then expect that they'll do it next time. Don't just do stuff for them. And also I will say, like, when I go shopping for my gear, I lift it all before I even test out what it sounds like. So
Smart.
Yeah, and I've been doing that like since I was a kid. I walk around the music store and pick up the amplifiers, and if I can't lift that speaker cabinet, I don't even plug it in. And I always have had some kind of wheel system, so like a Canadian Tire dolly. I now have this like collapsible children's wagon that Jory also has, and it's amazing, and it saves your back and your body. It means you can be an independent sufficient human being in the gigging world, and it also means that you have the wherewithal to be able to help out your buddies and your bandmates carry their stuff. Like, I will carry a drummer's entire kit except for the hardware bag because it's so heavy. They don't even want to carry it, and to be contributing equally that way. And I just think women are equal, or yeah, we are. So Maddie, you were asking if things are changing, and I do think things are changing. Yeah, man. I think it's been growing, and I feel like I'm being treated differently than I was years ago, and people aren't thinking that I'm the lead singer's girlfriend when I show up with all of my gear, or that I'm being the roadie for the guitar player in the band. They kind of just think I'm the bass player now, which is a great feeling because I've spent a lot of years having everyone think I was somebody's girlfriend. And so, and I'm not sure though if that's changed because the places that I roam in and the kinds of people that I play with and the kinds of sound technicians that I'm dealing with now are of a different kind of caliber. So they just expect that I show up knowing how to do things, or if just the industry is changing. But I will say, someone reminded me of this the other day, but a couple of years ago, I was playing at this festival, and the sound technician really, he came over while I was trying to plug in all of my gear, and we were in this high pressure, like 15-minute turnover. And he came over and started to instruct me as to where to plug my bass in. At this point, I've been playing bass guitar for 20 years.
Oh my God.
20 years. And my bandmate, she watched this happen, and I remember her just being like, what is going on? Like, she knows how to plug her stuff in. And of course, I couldn't lose my mind because that guy was entirely responsible for the sound of our show. But yeah, that was really tricky. But here's what and I've been in a lot of different situations where soundmen have definitely not treated me like I knew what I was doing. And here's part of the thing, though, is that those people have had experiences before where they've worked with women who didn't know how to plug in their instrument. Or quite at that particular festival, that sound person dealt with my friend who played before me, who's an incredible artist, but she didn't know how to tune her guitar. So he had to tune her guitar for her. And that's why he treated me like I didn't know what I was doing, right? And so for every opportunity where I've kind of like felt where I've been walking in and people I've had to prove myself, I feel like it's an honor because I get to walk away from that situation and I get to constantly show people that women are capable and that we can do a bunch of stuff and that we're not dummies and that we're able to play music and that we have value in this industry. And so I really like to see those kinds of situations as opportunities. And I have had men come up and apologize to me afterwards for the way that they treated me and for the assumptions that they made about what I was doing on that stage or in that venue. And that's been very cool to see. And so, I mean, I think that it is also our responsibility as women to just like show up and to show up in multiple ways, you know, and like to be there in the same way that we expect our peers to be there, whether they're guys or girls. Yeah. And also like, you're going to get discouraged. Women do face a lot of different kinds of stuff that I know for sure men don't face in the same kinds of ways. And we get judged a lot more on our looks and people have different expectations on that. People don't have nearly as many expectations on our abilities. People say a lot of weird things, have said a lot of weird things to me before the show. Like before I even have to step on stage, I hear a million weirdo things that make me feel bad about who I am and how I travel this planet, and then I have to like get up there and be a badass on stage. And so there are all these kinds of things happening, and so to just like to really dig deep and like remember why you do what you do, because it's so much bigger than all of the other sort of genderized sexist stuff that you're going to have to deal with. You putting music out into the world matters way more than that. And every time you do it with intention and with earnesty and with heart, every time you stand up for yourself, every time you don't submit to a whole bunch of different weird ideas about what women are supposed to be, every time you prove all of them wrong, yeah, you end up making it easier for everyone that comes after you. Yeah, and you just end up changing what people actually think about women. I think that's been one of the coolest things is that I've had so many opportunities where I'm just like, man, what an honor to be able to change people's minds about what a female musician can do.
That's a really admirable perspective. It is, because it would be, you know, I can only imagine just the struggles and then to maintain such a positive attitude. And say, I really respect and admire that. You've done a lot for you know, younger musicians, and thank you for answering so honestly. Okay. I hate to say this, but I think that what we have to do is have you back, because there's so many other things that I know we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about music therapy, and then your experience as a musical director, as an MD, all those sorts of stuff. So we should probably leave it there today, I think, but okay. because if we dive into those things, we're not going to stop. I know we could go on for a long time. So unless there's anything that you want to quickly ask now, maybe we should pick up on this next time. What do you think, Maddie?
Yeah. I think we talked about some great stuff. You have some great advice, especially for young musicians starting out.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. I would love to come back and do another session. I know, Maddie, when you brought up being a woman in the industry, it was already at the 30-minute mark, and I was like, oh no, I have so many things to say. I got a lot of opinions. But it
was important to get that in there, Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I took the time. I wanted to say it.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for having me, and let's do that again because I have more things to share.
Okay, well, let's just say we'll leave it there for now, but we will
Okay.
definitely have Lisa Jacobs back, and we'll delve a little bit further, into all that sort of stuff. Lisa, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, see you soon.